If you bought a citronella plant expecting mosquitoes to avoid your patio, there's an important detail nobody can smell from the plant tag. Citronella really is associated with mosquito repellent, but that doesn't mean a citronella plant sitting beside your chair is actually creating a protective cloud around you. And that distinction between what a plant contains and what a living plant actually releases into the space around it is behind some of the most persistent mosquito advice in gardening. So let's start with the plant that makes this myth so convincing. 7. Citronella grass. This one almost feels unfair because citronella grass really is the source of citronella oil. So if someone tells you citronella has mosquito-repelling properties, there is a legitimate connection there. The problem comes when that statement quietly turns into, "Grow citronella near your patio, and mosquitoes will stay away." Those aren't the same claim. Iowa State University Extension specifically notes that citronella grass contains compounds with repellent properties, but that those benefits depend on releasing the oils. A plant simply sitting on a patio doesn't have the same effect. Think about what that means. You can have the right plant, producing a relevant compound, and still not get the protection you thought you purchased. Because mosquitoes don't care what chemicals are theoretically inside the leaves. What matters is whether an effective repellent is actually reaching the mosquito at a useful concentration where you need protection. And if citronella grass can fail that test, a plant with an even more convincing name can too. 6. The mosquito plant. You'll see this sold under names like mosquito plant, citronella geranium, or sometimes citrosa. Rub the foliage and you can understand the sales pitch immediately. There's that familiar citrusy, citronella-like smell. But smelling like something associated with mosquito repellent doesn't automatically turn a potted plant into one. Iowa State notes that the widely promoted mosquito geranium is a scented geranium. Its citronella fragrance is released when the leaves are rubbed, brushed, or crushed. Just growing in a container on your patio? It doesn't repel mosquitoes around the patio the way the name suggests, and this exposes another reason the myth survives so easily. We experience a powerful smell and assume insects must be experiencing a powerful repellent effect at the same time. But your nose detecting an aromatic plant is not a measurement of mosquito protection. And the same problem shows up in herbs that were never given the words mosquito plant at all. 5. Lemon thyme. Lemon thyme has almost everything you'd expect from a natural mosquito repellent. It's aromatic. It has that citrus association, and it appears repeatedly in recommendations for mosquito-repelling gardens. But Iowa State includes lemon thyme among the plants touted as mosquito repellents that don't provide the expected effect simply by being planted nearby. Again, this doesn't mean the chemistry of the plant is irrelevant. It means the method matters. A volatile compound released from crushed plant material, an extracted essential oil, and an intact thyme plant growing beside your patio furniture are three different situations. And that's the question worth asking whenever someone recommends a repellent plant. What exactly was tested? Was it the living plant, crushed leaves, an essential oil, a formulated product? Because evidence for one doesn't automatically prove the others. Which brings us to a plant whose fragrance is so famous that it's especially easy to make that leap. 4. Lavender. Lavender smells strong to us, and its essential oil has been among the plant-derived oils studied for repellent activity. That's real. But it still doesn't establish that putting lavender around your seating area creates a reliable mosquito barrier. Mississippi State Extension makes the practical distinction nicely. Fragrant herbs, such as lavender, may have some potential for deterring mosquitoes, but crushed plant material on clothing or skin is likely more useful than the plant's presence on the porch. And even that isn't permission to start rubbing random garden plants all over yourself. Volatile oils can irritate skin, and plant-derived doesn't automatically mean skin-safe. The important point here is simpler. Lavender can be a fantastic garden plant. You can grow it for the flowers, the fragrance, the pollinators, or simply because you like lavender. Just don't make the mosquito-free patio its job description, because a pleasant smell surrounding the plant is not the same thing as a tested personal repellent surrounding you. And another very strong-smelling herb runs into the same problem. 3. Peppermint feels like it should repel almost anything. Crush one leaf and the aroma is immediate. And peppermint essential oil is another plant-derived oil that has shown repellent activity in research discussed by Penn State Extension. But notice those words again. Peppermint essential oil. That's different from a peppermint plant sitting untouched in a pot. This distinction is easy to lose online because all of these things get compressed into one sentence. Peppermint repels mosquitoes. But that's not specific enough to be useful. Which peppermint preparation, at what concentration, applied where, for how long? A study involving an oil doesn't establish an invisible exclusion zone around the plant that produced it, so keep the peppermint if you enjoy growing it. Just don't assume the mosquitoes have agreed to respect the perimeter of the pot. And that brings us to a plant where the evidence is nuanced enough that an absolute claim would actually make this list less accurate. 2. Basil is interesting because aromatic herbs aren't completely irrelevant to mosquito behavior. There is research interest in plant-derived compounds, and extension sources discuss basil among herbs with potential insect-deterring properties. But that's still a long way from saying, put a basil plant on the table, and you're protected. Mississippi State Extension cautions that rubbing crushed plant material is likely more useful than simply having the plant on the porch, and that a few scattered plants are unlikely to have a significant effect on the overall mosquito population around a home. That's the pattern this entire list keeps coming back to. The exaggerated claim usually begins with something smaller that may actually be true. A plant contains an interesting compound. An essential oil shows activity. Crushed foliage releases a strong volatile substance. Then, somewhere between that fact and the garden center, the claim becomes, plant this and mosquitoes stay away. That's the leap you should be skeptical of. And our final plant makes a good example because even current gardening advice doesn't always describe these plants in exactly the same way. 1. Lemon balm. Lemon balm is aromatic, easy to grow, and regularly appears on lists of plants suggested for mosquito-prone patios. Some extension guidance discusses aromatic plants, such as lemon balm, as potentially interfering with mosquitoes or helping deter them, especially when foliage is brushed or crushed. But that still isn't evidence for the version of the claim most people actually care about. Can I put a few lemon balm plants around my patio and count on them as reliable mosquito protection? That's where the claim gets much weaker. The presence of an aromatic plant is not equivalent to applying a tested repellent, and once you see that distinction, all 7 plants look different. The mistake wasn't necessarily believing that citronella, lavender, peppermint, basil, or other plants contain biologically interesting chemicals. Many do. The mistake was treating the name of a compound, an essential oil, a crushed leaf, and a living plant as though they're interchangeable forms of mosquito protection. They're not, so if you already have these plants, there's no reason to rip them out. Citronella grass can still be an attractive ornamental. Lavender can still smell wonderful. Basil still earns its space in the garden every time you make pesto, and lemon balm certainly doesn't need mosquitoes to justify growing it. Just give these plants jobs they can actually perform. Because if your goal is preventing mosquito bites, the more useful question isn't, what plant do mosquitoes hate? It's, what has actually been shown to protect me in the form I'm going to use it? And a plant sitting quietly in a pot is a very different answer from the oil hidden inside its leaves.